Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves, really, in maybe the highest tension point of the global race for technological sovereignty, the semiconductor war.
Yeah, it's a flashpoint. And we're looking at a specific moment here, right, where just one technical finding set off this huge geopolitical reaction.
Exactly. A single discovery triggered massive retaliation almost instantly. So our mission today is to take you inside the source material. We want to understand, what this Canadian research firm actually revealed about Huawei's AI chips.
And then the blacklisting, Beijing's response was incredibly fast.
Incredibly fast. We need to unpack that and figure out what this whole sequence tells us about, well, how effective global tech sanctions really are and maybe the future of these complex supply chains.
It's definitely a shortcut to understanding where the real power struggles are playing out.
Okay, let's get into it, starting with the spark, right? The incident itself. It all kicked off when Tech Insights, this Canadian firm known for really detailed chip teardowns.
They're specialists in reverse engineering semiconductors, basically.
Right. They decided to look inside one of Huawei's flagship products, the Ascend 910C AI processor, a pretty important chip for Huawei's AI ambitions.
A very important chip.
And for anyone maybe not familiar, a teardown like this is it's almost like digital forensics, isn't it?
Yeah.
You open up the device, the chip package.
You meticulously document every single component, who made it, where it likely came from.
And the report they published wasn't just, technical data. It turned out to be a bombshell because of what it revealed about Huawei's sourcing.
Yeah, what's really interesting here is that the focus wasn't just on the parts Huawei might be making itself, but on the critical bits it still apparently needs to buy from global suppliers.
Ah, okay. So what did they find?
Well, Tech Insights revealed the Ascend 910C contained key components sourced from three massive non-Chinese players: TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
The biggest contract chip maker in the world.
Exactly. And also Samsung Electronics from South Korea and SK Hynix, also South Korean, major memory and logic players.
Okay, TSMC, Samsung, SK Hynix. And why is that the bombshell?
Because, and this is the crucial part for you listening, all three of those companies operate under U.S. export controls. They are, officially at least, barred from supplying advanced tech to companies like Huawei.
Huawei, which is firmly on the U.S. entity list, has been for years.
Precisely. So this discovery didn't just expose, the components of a chip. It exposed what analysts are now calling evidence of a pretty sophisticated network.
A network. To do what?
To potentially circumvent those American export controls. It raises serious questions.
It really does. I mean, Washington's been tightening the screws on chip access for years now, right? Trying to cut off this advanced tech.
That's the policy, yes.
So if these restricted components are still showing up in Huawei's top-tier AI chips, well, how effective are the controls? Really sounds less like a tight grip and more like
a sieve. Yeah, that's the implication many are drawing. The source material suggests it might be less about the design of the sanctions and more about, enforcement gaps and maybe a lack of transparency.
which is a huge liability in this kind of strategic tech competition.
A massive liability.
And speaking of reactions, Beijing's response wasn't subtle. It was instantaneous, aggressive even.
Oh, yeah. Within days, literally days, of Tech Insights publishing that report detailing the foreign components.
China's Ministry of Commerce slapped Tech Insights onto its unreliable entity list. Just like that.
Bam! Retaliation served.
The official reason given was, the usual boilerplate, protecting national security, economic interests.
Standard language for these situations?
But the timing tells the real story, doesn't it? The fact this blacklist dropped almost immediately after the teardown report went public, it feels like shooting the messenger.
Absolutely. It's a clear act of reprisal against the source of the uncomfortable information.
And this unreliable entity list, we should probably explain that a bit. It's basically Beijing's countermove, right? Their version of the U.S. entity list.
Exactly. It's a tit-for-tat mechanism. And getting placed on it has serious, immediate consequences for a foreign company.
Like what, specifically?
Well, the moment Tech Insights was listed, all Chinese companies and citizens were effectively prohibited from any interaction. No sharing data, no conducting business, no cooperation of any kind.
Wow. So it freezes them out completely.
Completely. It cuts off access to the entire Chinese market for samples, for contacts, for collaboration, for sales. It's designed to be a painful deterrent, a clear signal.
And the speed, the severity, it just screams that Beijing is determined to shut down any exposure of these foreign tech dependencies. They moved instantly to block that transparency.
Fiercely protective of Huawei and their national tech champions, clearly.
So let's put this into the timeline just to give our listener the full context.
Yeah.
Huawei first hit the U.S. entity list back in May 2019.
Right, that was the start of the major restriction.
Then, between 2020 and 2022, the sanctions got much tougher. Expanded to block purchases of advanced chips globally, hitting manufacturing tools, targeting suppliers connected to U.S. tech.
A concerted effort to cut off their access to the leading edge.
So you have, what, 5+ years of escalating pressure specifically designed to cripple their ability to produce advanced stuff. And then, boom, 2024 Tech Insights finds these critical foreign components still inside. That contradiction is really the core issue here.
It absolutely is, because looking at the bigger picture, this reliance, if proven widespread, fundamentally undermines China's biggest stated goal in this area: achieving total semiconductor self-sufficiency, technological independence from the West.
The sanctions are definitely causing pain, but maybe not achieving that complete technological isolation Washington hoped for.
It seems that way. They're not getting the complete separation, even if it's making things much harder and more expensive for Huawei.
But then there's the other side of the coin, isn't there? Their domestic progress. We all saw the headlines about Huawei's Mate 60 Pro smartphone.
Right, the one with the 7-nanometer chip inside, manufactured domestically by SMICIT, China's Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation.
And that was a genuine breakthrough, right? A big step forward for China's domestic capabilities.
Oh, absolutely. A significant achievement, no question. But, and this is crucial, especially for these high-end AI chips like the Ascend on the cupboard, that 7-millimeter process, while impressive, is still significantly behind the cutting edge.
Behind the 3-nanometer and 5-nanometer processes that the global leaders, like TSMC and Samsung, are using now.
Exactly. And that difference, those few nanometers, it matters hugely for AI processors.
Why specifically for AI? What's the bottleneck there?
Well, AI workloads involve just massive amounts of parallel computation. You need billions and billions of transistors packed incredibly densely to run those complex algorithms efficiently.
More density means more power.
More density means more speed, yes, but critically it means much better performance per watt. Power efficiency. Think about data centers packed with these things running hot.
Oh, okay. So heat and power consumption are huge factors.
Huge. For a powerful AI accelerator like the Ascend 910C, that efficiency gap between domestic 7 nanometers and leading-edge 3-nanometer or 5 millimeters from abroad, it's potentially a massive performance difference. They likely still need that foreign tech for truly world-class AI performance.
So the domestic capability isn't quite there yet for the most demanding AI chips. Which brings us back to the question. If that dependency gap exists, how did those TSMC, Samsung, SK Hynix parts end up in that Ascend chip years after sanctions kicked in?
Analysts looking at this offer a few main interpretations, really 3 strategic possibilities.
All right, what are they?
First, simple stockpiling. Huawei might have bought huge quantities of these components before the restrictions fully bit down, just built up a massive inventory.
Plausible. What's the second?
Second, systematic loopholes, maybe gaps in the enforcement or definitions within the sanctions themselves that allow parts to be rerouted or reclassified somehow.
Exploiting the complexity of the rules.
Potentially. And the third, which gets a lot of attention, is the use of intermediary companies, shell corporations or third-party distributors.
To basically hide the final destination.
Exactly. These intermediaries could buy the components legally, perhaps in a different country or under a different guise, and then funnel them onward to the sanctioned entity, like Huawei, obscuring the true supply chain.
That sounds incredibly complex to track and regulate. Like a game of whack-a-mole for regulators.
It really is. It turns regulation into this constant cat-and-mouse game. And it highlights the sheer complexity of the global semiconductor ecosystem. Let's just look again at those suppliers found in the chip.
Right. TSMC, Samsung, SK Hynix.
You've got TSMC in Taiwan. They manufacture the majority of the world's most advanced logic chips on contract. Then Samsung in South Korea, a powerhouse in both memory and advanced logic. And SK Hynix, also South Korea, a giant in DRAM and NAND flash memory.
Essential building blocks for basically any advanced processor.
Absolutely essential. And these companies, it's important to stress, publicly state they comply fully with U.S. export controls. They have to.
Yet the teardown evidence suggests parts traceable to them still reached Huawei somehow. Indirectly, perhaps.
It creates a real headache, right? A credibility
Yeah.
issue. And this exposure seems to have pushed the U.S. Commerce Department to think harder about, well, enhanced restrictions, tighter enforcement, plugging those specific loopholes.
So the regulatory framework is constantly playing catch-up.
It has to, given the incentives and complexities involved in circumventing it.
And it wasn't just Tech Insights feeling the heat from Beijing, was it? The blacklisting seems part of a wider pattern.
That's right. Our sources point out it wasn't an isolated incident. China used its unreliable entity list against others around the same time.
Like Recorded Future, the U.S. cybersecurity firm.
Yes. The stated reason there was alleged cyber operations targeting Chinese interests, and also BAE Systems, the UK defense giant.
Why them?
Because of their defense tech cooperation and arms sales with Taiwan, Beijing saw that as undermining its security interests.
So, connecting the dots. Beijing seems to be using this list more assertively now.
It definitely looks like a strategic tool. They're hitting back at firms they perceive as either enabling sanctions against China, supporting geopolitical rivals like Taiwan, or, as in Tech Insight's case, exposing uncomfortable truths about their technological capabilities or dependencies. It signals an escalation.
A clear message. Cross our lines, and there will be consequences.
A painful economic message, yes.
Now, let's zero in on the Canada angle for a moment. Because Tech Insights being Canadian, well, it lands right in the middle of ongoing Canada-China tensions, doesn't it?
Very much so. You could see Tech Insights as sort of collateral damage in a much bigger diplomatic fight.
This tension goes back quite a way.
No.
We had the whole Meng Wanzhou detention back in 2018, Huawei CFO, that caused a massive diplomatic freeze.
A huge crisis between Ottawa and Beijing still echoes today.
Then, more recently, 2022, Canada formally banned Huawei and ZTE equipment from its 5G networks, citing national security.
Following allies like the US and UK.
So, putting a relatively small Canadian research firm on the blacklist in 2024, it feels like another escalation point in that specific bilateral relationship, adding more strain.
Definitely adds strain. And for the research industry itself, beyond just Tech Insights, the impact is significant.
How so?
Well, immediately, Tech Insights faces huge hurdles doing future teardowns of Chinese tech. Access to samples within China, talking to contacts, gathering market intelligence, that all gets much harder, if not impossible.
Cuts them off from a key source of information.
Right. But the bigger worry, the sort of macro concern, is the chilling effect this could have globally.
Meaning other research firms might get scared.
Exactly. The risk of facing similar retaliation, getting blacklisted, losing market access, might make other research outfits, maybe intelligence firms too, hesitate. They might self-censor, hold back on publishing sensitive findings about Chinese supply chains or technology.
Which ultimately makes it harder for everyone else, governments, competitors, the public, to understand what's really going on.
It benefits those who want to keep their supply chains opaque, so it undermines transparency, which is crucial in this tech race.
Yeah, that makes sense. This whole incident just confirms, really, that this tech war, especially around semiconductors, is far from over. It's maybe intensifying.
Semiconductor dominance is absolutely central. It underpins economic competitiveness, military advantage, everything. And Huawei's ability to source chips remains right at the heart of that battleground.
So let's try and synthesize this. What are the key numbers or takeaways from the sources we've looked at?
Okay, if we pull it together, you've got more than 5 years of escalating U.S. sanctions that evidently haven't completely choked off access to crucial foreign technology for Huawei.
5 years, still getting through somehow.
Then you have 3 prominent Western firms, Tech Insights, Recorded Future, BAE Systems, blacklisted by Beijing in what looks like coordinated retaliation for actions deemed hostile or for exposing vulnerabilities.
3 companies targeted.
And all of this is happening within a global semiconductor industry worth well over $500 billion annually. That's the scale of the prize everyone's fighting for. Huge stakes.
Huge stakes indeed. So the core takeaway for you, our listeners, seems to be this. The Tech Insights revelation points to some pretty critical, maybe systemic, gaps in how export controls are actually enforced on the ground. Sanctions are a powerful tool, but maybe not a perfect one.
Imperfect is a good word. And China's response, that immediate, harsh blacklisting, shows just how fiercely committed Beijing is to protecting its tech champions like Huawei and pushing forward with its self-sufficiency goals, even if it causes international friction.
They're playing hardball.
They really are. And looking ahead, this semiconductor race, it's fundamentally going to shape who leads in technology globally, and by extension, who holds geopolitical power for decades.
So the final thought to leave people with.
Well, here's something to chew on. If advanced chips, the really cutting-edge stuff, can still find their way to restricted entities, perhaps through these complex global supply chains, using intermediaries, exploiting loopholes, stockpiling, what does that ultimately tell us about the long-term effectiveness of economic sanctions as a primary tool of statecraft in this high-tech era?
Can sanctions really work if the global system is this complex and porous?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? It's the strategic uncertainty that everyone involved in global technology policy is grappling with right now.